Hello, I'm David R. Jones of the Community Service Society. Welcome to the Urban Agenda. Our topic is the future of vocational and technical education in New York City. On a previous edition of the Urban Agenda, we addressed the serious issue of the 170,000 young people in New York who are not in school and are not working, what we call disconnected youth, age 16 to 24. We have a serious education deficit in New York City. Nearly half of all kids who enter city high schools, 47%, drop out and never get any kind of diploma at all. Fewer than 20% graduate with a state regent's diploma. High school dropouts account for about half of the city's disconnected youth. In our recent CSS survey of low-income New Yorkers, 9 out of 10 respondents support vocational ed in high schools. That last statistic came as a surprise to me because in my day, it was Black and Latino kids who were not seen to have much of a future that were pushed into voc ed. Joining us today to talk about all of this are Richard Cases, Senior Vice President of the not-for-profit Jobs for the Future, Melissa Silberman, the Principal of Automotive High School in Brooklyn, and Fred Bordoff, who owns and operates the New York Center for Automotive Technology in Queens. Thank you very much for joining us today. What is this all about? I mean, we've been hearing about problems in the city school system. I think the chancellor has been very upfront with the problems in the system, but there doesn't seem to be much excitement or focus on technical and vocational education, at least till this time. Maybe I'll start with you.
Well, when you said excitement and focus, I thought you should be in our 7th period engine shop because it's a very exciting place to be. In the past, we've had to deal with stereotypes around the kind of student that landed at a school like Automotive High School. And guidance counselors would say such awful statements as, he's good with his hands, send him to Automotive High School. Now we are reinvigorating the curriculum and creating the kind of place where honor students, women who are interested in technical careers, and right now we have 62 trendsetting females, are coming to Automotive High School. And I think that that's changing the tone of schools like Automotive High School, but it is an uphill battle and we do have challenges that we face. So,
Richard, how does this fit in the national perspective? You obviously look much beyond New York. You look everywhere. As a matter of fact, you've just done something for the state of Pennsylvania on this.
Well, I think the national picture is fascinating. Career and technical education is almost invisible in discussions of high school reform. But when you actually look at how many high school students are taking a concentration in career and technical education nationally, it's 25%. So 1 out of 4 students in American high schools are taking at least 3 vocational courses in addition to their academic courses. So it's a big number. It's smaller than it was 15 years ago. It's shrunk as the pressure for academic rigor has risen. But you can't improve American high schools and you can't improve urban high schools without dealing with the large number of students who are in vocational and career programs and schools.
Fred, what would be a typical student coming into your program? Who are they?
Well, the students that we have are actually working mechanics and technicians that are looking to learn the new systems, to upgrade the new computers, the new technology, the interlock brake systems, and now the navigation systems. I mean, the car is becoming anything but a piece of transportation with what you have in it.
So this notion of the car where everyone jacks up their car in their driveway and fixes it, that's gone. Now
yeah, and the viewer out there sees it too. I mean, the DIY that we call him, a do-it-yourselfer.
Right.
He opens the hood of the car and there's nothing he can see or touch. Everything is internal. The car itself is now split into 2 halves, really, a mechanical section and electronic section. Some cars have as much as 12, 15 onboard computers in the car that communicate with each other. The technology is there, the equipment is there to read into these computers, okay, and to reprogram, just like you do with your laptop or your desktop computer. But they need the knowledge, and the industry is dying for students or people to come in with that kind of knowledge, or at least to be able to be trained into that. Then it's no longer using your hands.
Do we have any projections about how many of these new highly skilled people are going to be needed in the next 5, 10 years as a city and the school's been looking at this? What does it look like?
Well, just one correction, which is that not every person who opens the hood of a car is a man. So,
Okay.
I apologize for that.
for
Well, you have 60 now.
Right, I have 60 female students who are amazing
Right.
young technicians. Current industry trends, they have projected 60,000 retirements across America in the automotive industry in the next 5 years. So it's what if you needed to get your automobile fixed and you couldn't find a technician, male or female, because we're not funding vocational ed, because we're not taking care of students in CTE. So the need is very great.
Well, it is a perception, I think, perhaps negatively, that we haven't done very much or thought very much about technical and voc ed. Certainly. And is there any movement against that? Is there a pushback, recognition? I mean, as I said in my opening, I was stunned with the results we got. This was the largest survey of low-income New Yorkers. Actually, it's the largest survey that we know about anywhere in the country of low-income people. And it came up like a bullet on the chart. When you talked about education, I expected them all to have better college preparation. None of that. Absolutely, almost didn't register. It was all technical and voc ed. I think there was, I think people are frightened now for their kids because of the other statistics. What are you seeing, Richard?
I think your survey actually surprises me, because when we go around the country and talk to people and talk to parents across all kinds of socioeconomic groups,
Right.
it's college, college, college. But I think what you're picking up is a realism,
Right.
and a realism that says, college, fine, but what if my kid, can only make it to community college, isn't likely to make it, given what I see of my kid in 9th grade, my kid's not going to get there to a 4-year school as is, and yet they have to, and yet we need to figure out ways for them to make a living.
Right.
And so what you're picking up that. I think the challenge is, as you started to say earlier, to reposition how we think about what career and technical education is and what the components of it is. That it's not, just as you were saying, Fred, about what it takes to fix a car these days. It's the academic skills that are needed to succeed in even the jobs that we used to say, oh, those are the voc jobs. There's really a blurring now between what you need to succeed in work and what you need to succeed in further education.
You just said, Richard, it's twofold. When you said make a living, okay, we need the mechanics to work on the car to make a living, but we need the technicians. And the federal government is forcing that by putting onto the manufacturers onuses that the CAFE they want to raise. The anti-lock brakes,
what's the CAFE?
corporate average fuel economy.
Okay.
Okay, so that now it's 27.5 miles per gallon. They want to raise that. They want to bring it to trucks. Airbag systems that they're having now.
Right.
All of this requires technology that the manufacturers are putting into the car, but there's nobody out there that knows how to fix them.
Now, how much would one of your graduates earn? What do they go for?
We have people making in excess of 6 figures.
Good luck if you try to get, you're a lawyer like me. Forget it.
I honestly have over 4 people working for me that do 6 figures.
It's quite common for a high school graduate to leave automotive high school and go to a very good dealership and start at about 45. But the assumption is, and this goes back to what you were saying, that it's not just one or the other. You're no longer just with your hands or academic. The assumption is that if you're going to work for a large dealership, you're going to continue your college. Because as a buyer, I want to deal with a technician who can speak with me in a way that's informed, educated. I want to deal with a technician who knows how to write a service order in English that I can understand. These are traits that require, college degrees or at least an associate's degree. So I think what's changing actually in vocational or career and technical ed at the school level is that no longer, even within voc ed, is there tracks. A student who would be taking an advanced placement class is also learning how to create a grease car for Mercedes, with a diesel. So there's a lot of interwoven curriculum, and there's a lot of related classes around academics.
What Melissa's showing in her school is that you can take a school that is organized around career themes, organized around learning, technical skills, and you can add the academics to it in a way that 20 years ago we didn't expect from vocational programs. And in fact, federal law, until 20 years ago, federal law basically said this is for kids who are not going on to college. Now it's for kids who want to move forward in a career, whatever it takes.
Richard, you still have the student, and I see them all day long, that are not going on to college. They just don't either have the capability or the desire. Okay, so with
Which
all the
is why-
technology, we
Right.
still need mechanics to turn the
Absolutely.
wrench that will make $35,000, $40,000. He'll make a living and he can support a family.
Which is why I think that goes back to our parents saying vocational ed matters in New York City, because there's very few parents who aren't afraid of their child's future. We're all worried, what will he do when he graduates, what will she do? If you have a student who's enrolled at a school like Automotive High School or one of the other amazing career and technical ed programs in New York City, you have a feeling of security about your child. You can say, he or she will always work.
Get a job.
I don't have to worry that he'll be on the street or he'll be unemployed. And it's part of your Disconnected Youth survey,
Right.
because this was a group, what keeps them in college or in high school is that it's relevant to the world. So one of the things that strikes me is that if you want students to stay in school, the work and the academic work has to be relevant. You know, they have to be able to say, what happens when I leave? You know, so.
We'll be right back to continue the urban agenda.
When I need you, I just close my eyes and I'm with you. And all that I so wanna give you, it's only a
You don't have to be a hero to be a hero.
away.
When you adopt a child from foster care, just being there makes all the difference.
We're speaking today about the future of vocational and technical education in New York City. Richard, you've just finished a study on the state of Pennsylvania and what they're doing with their system and what reforms they need. What were the sort of takeaway things from that study?
Well, I wanted to mention that there are actually a number of different kinds of vocational and technical schools and school structures. In New York, you have, like automotive, you have large schools that are on a single, organized around a single industry. Often in a more rural area, you'll have 10 districts that'll send kids to one regional vocational school. Or in other urban districts, you might have in the comprehensive high schools, vocational programs like a business program. I think the most successful schools are those that are organized around either organized around a single theme, a single industry, or that, the most problematic ones are the comprehensive high schools that are trying to, in effect, shunt people into a business program and say we'll move them off, and then it's really a track. It's not a CTE program. What we found and I mention that because in Pennsylvania we were looking primarily at these regional VOTEC schools, and what we found is, and you'd find this in New York, incredible amount of variation. Right, there are some schools that are so good at what they do that you would want any kid to go there, and there are some schools that don't have the resources, don't have the imagination, don't have the leadership, have old faculty, obsolete programs, and you wouldn't want to send anyone there. But what we did see is that in that range, we saw that there really was opportunity for improvement, that with city and state policies, you could really start to encourage the high road programs and the good schools, and you could close off the more obsolete programs and the older voc ed.
Melissa, what's your graduation rate for your young people?
It's actually very high considering the challenges that we face. It is currently about 50%, which is the city level. So,
Right.
I think our last year was 46, and there was some debate about these other two, which would have made it 48. But I want to speak a little bit about a single industry high school that is a career and technical ed high school for a moment, and let you know one of the reasons I think we're becoming so successful is because when you're focused on a singular industry, you can really provide academic enrichment for students and academic intervention. And you really, in the past, the kind of students who were being focused or sent to voc ed were always the ones who needed only intervention. Now that we are one school doing this, looking at one industry, we can say there are students who are going to get enrichment and there are still students who need intervention. I think it's really important for educators to know that there are both sides of that and that you have to include both in your plan for success.
And where is your faculty drawn from? Where do they come from? Because I
Well-
heard from my friends at Teachers College, they don't teach anybody in technical and voc, should they? I don't know. I'm throwing that out, particularly if we're going to join this technical and academic thing together.
Well, as often as possible, I try and steal people from the industry. And I say steal because, they're making a lot of money, and to make them come back and be a teacher, you really have to, lure them back in. On the other side, my academic teachers, my goal is to get the best teacher for my students. So, I was very pleased to steal a reading specialist from Harvard and a math teacher from Teachers College. So there's both ends of that, in that we need the best in the industry, and we also need the best academic subject area teachers.
Well, this is a sort of hobby horse. Should we be training teachers specially in this discipline, or can they be? Are there some unique skill sets that?
I'm going to turn to
I
Frank
think-
for that.
Or do you have to get people from the industry?
No, I think it's far easier to get people from the industry, but then you've got to train them in teaching.
And what,
Right.
right,
Right.
exactly.
And the problem that vocational ed used to have, and honestly, I don't know if they still do, but they would take somebody from the industry, throw them in a classroom.
There-
And he didn't have the skills to
Interesting.
teach.
Does the Teaching
I think-
Academy, for instance, have a special thing for your faculty?
The teaching fellows do not have, they don't run a CTE track, but what we do have that you may have heard of is SVAs, which is something that the UFT teacher.
What the hell is that?
It's Substitute Vocational Assistant.
Yeah.
And that's something that the UFT has set up for a long time now, which takes people from industry and allows them to come back. And it also takes graduates of good CTE programs and allows them to come back and be trained as teachers. So they still have to get their bachelor's, they still have to get their teaching certification, they have to do all the things a teacher would do, but we know that they love for us, cars, because they were graduates of automotive.
Right.
And now they want to come back and be a shop teacher, because in our building, the shop teachers are the most respected, the most admired, and the most loved teachers, because our kids are with them 2 and 3 periods a day, and they're like the fathers and uncles.
Well, this is a paradigm shift that's going on. My day, you'd find. What is the difference between the sort of the voc ed of my day, of the 50s, I hate to admit, and today? What's different here? And Richard or
yeah, I think
Lisa?
I'm going to ask Richard to start, 'cause I think there's a lot that you
Well, I think
studied.
in the past 10 to 15 years, you've seen a real focus on academic quality and on improving the academics. Some of that is just in the academic courses themselves, and some of it is trying to integrate academics into the technical courses. So that I was going to ask you if you have any team teaching of academic and technical.
We do, and
Yeah.
that, I'd say, answers your question about, well, are the shop teachers still the ones you say they don't? In fact, that's not the case. Last year, I co-taught a career and technical ed English language arts class for juniors, and those juniors that took this class spent 3 periods in a engine repair shop and a period in English with Miss Silberman. And so what would happen is sometimes the shop teacher, Mr. Casino, would come to my class and teach a literature lesson on a poem about cars. And I would go into his class and teach them how to write a compare and contrast essay about 2 different engine styles. And it was a real way to integrate.
But to
the
answer
curriculum.
David's
Yeah.
question directly, he asked about the difference between vocational ed when he was when
Yeah.
Well, I
we
think
were
that is a difference.
When we were coming
when
along,
we were
the ancient side of this, you guys don't remember that.
the difference is then automotive wise anyway, that's what I'm familiar with, was mechanics.
Right.
You didn't need the advanced education as you do with today's cars, with the cars of the 21st century.
Fred, I wanted to ask you about that. Are there any manufacturers, without getting you into trouble, that are taking a leadership role in sort of talking to you guys? In other words, we've just seen that GM and Ford got downgraded. We know that foreign cars are coming into this country in enormous numbers. Are any of those industry leaders trying to invest in this?
They are. That missed a good wrench. The problem, not a problem, the difference is that those manufacturers, Mercedes is working with Automotive High School.
a great partnership with
Toyota
Mercedes.
has been with for a long time.
Right.
But they're looking to get the better students into their dealerships.
Okay.
Whereas most of the industry are independent repair shops,
I
not
see.
the dealerships.
But what I will say about educating those mechanics who may not go to the top elite Mercedes program is that what I see in the city that's changed from the 50s
Right.
is that in that time period, those students in those programs were throwaways. And you'd
Yeah.
say, oh, well, they don't need the best teachers, they don't need the best curriculum. I think what's changed in New York City, and I think specifically in the DOE, is that now the feeling is there are no throwaway kids. Every student can and will learn, and every student deserves the best. So even if a student will go to be a mechanic, it doesn't mean he or she shouldn't know, an important Shakespeare reference. It doesn't mean he or she shouldn't understand classical music. So I think we had perhaps different perceptions about blue-collar employees in the
Right.
50s. And now there's a respect for the worker that I think matters.
We talked a lot about automotive. Richard, what other industries, at least in other locales, seem to be attracting this kind of attention?
Right. Well, as you look at how the economy has changed, you see where the new growth industries are. A lot of CTE programs in the
Yeah.
past 10, 15 years have been in IT, and or in design and graphics, in media, in health. Obviously, that's that's been a constant. But if you think of where the growing industries are, and a lot of them have real intellectual content, real academic underpinnings. Those are where the CTE growth is. In Pennsylvania, one of the fastest growing new program areas is public service.
Public service? That's real old-fashioned vocab, but no one should do that. But
It's
go
not
ahead, Tom.
just the respect that the automotive industry anyway is growing because of the technology, but it's also salaries.
Yes.
And it's common for good mechanics, not even the high technicians, but one that's a little of both, to do $65,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Now that's not that you can live nicely with.
I'm wondering if the change in our poll numbers also reflects the influx of first-generation immigrants coming into the city of New York who don't have all the baggage of what I faced in the 50s and are very intent upon economic advancement for them and their families and much more realistic about what has to be done here.
23% of my student body is English language learners.
Right.
And to respond to that, I would say that that's part of it. But even our high school seniors are out on after-school jobs starting at $10 and $15 an hour.
Well, let's talk about that. Do most of these programs have an after-school component that allows, I think one of the things we forget is you need money to operate as a teenager or a young adult in the city of New York, and schools often lose students because of that. It's a lot of money.
It is. Between their cell phone and their hair and their nails and their,
I would say.
It's not just the money. We need to develop co-op programs so that the student gets to see what it's like in the real world and what it's like in a real shop and how real mechanics work, and not just a lab or shop environment. Right. So that has to be formed, and the city can play a big role in that by giving incentives to repair shop owners to hire these people as interns.
It was
Tax incentives.
I used to be head of youth services for the city of New York a long time ago, and one of my concerns with the summer program, the summer jobs program, it never linked the way it should have. We never linked it into this kind of career, so people get a taste of what it's like to work and what they like.
We're very directly linked to industry.
Richard, I know you had, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say, there's historically, as you were mentioning, co-op programs, serve maybe 6-7% of seniors, in high schools in the United States. But those kids who are able to get job placements through co-op or through their voc teacher, which is not necessarily a co-op placement, or just through a teacher, have their earnings are better. Their employment record after they leave high school is much better as well.
My thanks to Richard Cases, Senior Vice President of the Not-for-Profit Jobs for the Future, Melissa Silberman, the Principal of Automotive High School in Brooklyn, and Fred Bordoff, who owns and operates the New York Center for Automotive Technology in Queens. I'm David R. Jones of the Community Service Society, and thank you for watching the Urban Agenda. To learn more about the work of the Community Service Society of New York or to comment on the Urban Agenda, please contact us at 212-614-5425 and on the web at www.cssny.org.